Starting in 2023 with the Students First Act, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds has been at the helm of our nation's most successful universal education freedom programs. She's heard the naysayers, dealt with the critics, and watched as demand has exploded throughout the Hawkeye State. What you're about to hear is not just how she pulled off such a feat, but how you can take the lessons she learned along the way back to your states. And I know we just had our strategy session from our Education Freedom Alliance, and I'm very excited about our 25 by 25 effort. With that, I would like to bring Governor Kim Reynolds up to the stage. They are ranked 5th overall in ALEC's Education Freedom Report. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Now, did you say we were 5th?
You're 5th in education freedom.
We got some work to do, team, okay?
You know what?
Okay.
We've been talking about competition between the states, and we used to have buttons that said, "What's your ranking?"
Yeah.
And everyone would wear them at the ALEC meetings because it was so great for everybody to say, well, what is yours? Well, what is yours? So we have the rich states, poor states, which I know you're familiar with, and now we came out with Education Freedom Index last year.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. You signed the Students First Act into law in January of 2023, saying education freedom belongs to all, not just to those who can afford it. At what point did you decide that universal education freedom would be the top priority for your administration?
Well, I mean, I've believed that for a long time, and we took incremental steps, but honestly, COVID was like the defining moment for me. I mean, as I talked to educators and I talked to parents, and we had a front row seat of what was happening in our classrooms. And when you had school board members at some of our largest public school in the state of Iowa that were voting to keep kids out of the classroom, but at the same time was sending her child to a private school so he could play football. So they wanted to close the school down, and I said, well, but they wanted to play football. And I said, well, you know, we're gonna educate the children, so if they can play football, then they can be, you know, they can be in the classroom. But that really was just a defining, the number of kids that were lost. And the legislature, again, came back into session, and one of the first bills that they passed was to give parents the option, you know, parental choice. Again, if you want your child to learn at home, you can, and do it, offsite or whatever, home, yep. Or just, you know, be a public school, but remote. Thank you, I couldn't think of the word. But if you're a parent that wanted them in the classroom, that they get to decide. They could do one or the other. It wasn't just the one. So,
it's amazing. I just think the whole education system, you know, you hear this word coming out of Silicon Valley, disrupting, we're going to disrupt this, we're going to disrupt that. I keep thinking the education system needs to be disrupted.
Oh, very much so.
And this is universal freedom is that disruption. And I think you've really been kind of a model for, you know, passing, you've said it took you 3 years to kind of get full universal. And so many of the legislators here are wrestling with this, and,
yep.
and they want to make it a priority. The obstacles that you faced, and then how you overcame them in terms of just getting it passed. And then I want to talk about the obstacles that you have in the implementation of it.
Okay. I'm really proud of the way we implemented it, but we tried it in 21, we tried it in 22, and we weren't successful. In fact, I think the last year we tried it, we stayed in session even longer than we should have, just to try to figure out a compromise that we could get it across the finish line. And I was able to get it through one chamber, but not through the other. And, you know, at that point, just trying to figure out some kind of a compromise to get it started, to get it to work, I just realized that it's not going to happen so I was either going to sit on the sidelines and continue to be an enabler and not get this done, or I was going to really get in the fight and really make sure that we had, because I was hearing it from the parents and from families as I traveled the state. They wanted that opportunity to choose, and a lot of times they would choose a public school, but they wanted that choice, especially after COVID. And so I weighed in some primaries. I didn't take it lightly. I thought about it for a long time before I did it, but again, I just felt like we need to either move or be done with it, and I was not willing to give up on it. I felt that strongly about it. So,
yeah. Very courageous.
Yeah. So I weighed in 9 primaries, and literally what we did really was then we put education freedom on the ballot. And I am telling you, Iowans responded in a really strong way by large majorities. Educational freedom, parental choice won. The primary races were not necessarily close that year. I barely made it across the finish line in 2018. It was a tough year. I think I was saying earlier, if you round it up, I think I won by 2%. And this was my top priority when I was running in 2022, and I won by 19%, almost 20. So again, there was a lot of support out there to get this done. And the best part about those kind of numbers and people, legislators that fought for it, that worked with it, that believed in it, we were able to really go big. And so I decided, I was sitting there, thinking, where do we start? We started here and trying to, and I thought, you know what? We're going for it. We're not going to get another opportunity like this, and so we're gonna go for it. And we did universal in 2 years. So
it's amazing. I think take heart on the fact that that's an 18% swing in your favor by making this your #1 priority. I think so many legislators are told by the media, we've been talking about at our lunch table, that if you support this issue, you're somehow going to lose your seat or your constituency. And I think it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
I think people get it. Parents understand what's going on.
So the other thing I did that I think was really important too is ours wasn't so much because of collective bargaining. It was more a rural issue. Really for the legislators, and I get that. I represented rural Iowa. I come from rural Iowa, and so I literally, again, hit the road. I would go with lawmakers that represented rural areas, and I said, bring all your superintendents together. I don't care if there's 4, I don't care if there's 6. Let's sit down and have a conversation. And I would just say to the superintendents, look, I know I'm not going to change your mind, but you don't need to be afraid of this either, and would give them the facts and the data that we had. But I said at the same time, I said, tell me what can we do with the legislature and the governor's office to help you be more innovative and be successful. And over and over and over from them, they talked about regulatory reform, Chapter 12, and the impact that has on rural Iowa, and then teacher salaries. They couldn't be competitive because it's based on per pupil funding, and so they would be a training ground for teachers, and they wanted to be able to pay the teachers more and keep them there and keep that consistency. So sat down with the lawmakers and we walked through how we could provide some wins for them and for rural super schools to give them some cover again to feel good about voting for it. The other thing that we did is before the legislative session, we started bringing the lawmakers in, and we sat down at the table and we walked through kind of the template of what the legislation looked like. Do you have any suggestions? Or here's why we went this way. What do you think? How can we make it stronger? And did that with a majority of them, and continued to have those meetings right up until the condition of the state when I announced the proposal. And when I announced it in the condition of the state, I talked about the partnership with the legislature and working on this together. So we did the condition of the state, which we do in the evening now. We dropped the bill that night, and at the same time, we had pre-recorded a commercial and radio that hit the airwaves like the next day. And again, I think it was just a way to help provide some cover and some reinforcement for the legislators to really kind of keep that momentum going. And it even gets better. So this incredible legislative body, in 2 weeks, we passed that bill. 2 weeks, and it was signed into law in the 3rd week. And that is critical. So if you can get it done, because there's a lot of people that want to go after these new legislators, and I was one. It's hard. But so that was helpful too, I think, in really the success in having that laid out, ready to go, had the leaders and the legislators ready to move, and it was just such a great team effort. Was one of the proudest things that I've done as governor, to really work with the legislature and get that done, and the impact that is going to have on our kids.
It's amazing. What we talk about at ALEC is the empire will strike back at Star Wars. The teachers unions and the NEA they are organizing now, and they're going to try to make it this very difficult. The one thing I remember so specifically when you passed it as quickly as you did John Wells texted me, I think that night and then the next day, after it was signed into law, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it. You guys broke records on the application process that night and into the morning.
Yeah.
And he was texting me, and I was telling my staff, and I was like, it's happening in Iowa. Tell us a little bit about that, because the demand, I mean, that just proves that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, so really, 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 really proud of my team. In fact, Jane DeVoe is with me right here, and she spent
Jane was getting all
24/7 working with Odyssey to really get this done. It was really important that it be automated, that it was as simple as it could be for our families. So I think we're maybe one of the first states to automate the entire system. But these guys set that up in 8 weeks. I said months earlier, and Jane leaned in and she goes, Governor, it was weeks. It was 8 weeks. And I said, that's right. Stood it up in 8 weeks, so a really, really short timeline to be able to offer it to the students that year. And, you know, I think we projected something like 14,000. We had almost 19,000 approved. And I mean a really short timeline. We've continued to enhance the process. So this year, we just closed at the end of June. And then it takes 5 minutes to fill out the application online, and that parent has a response within 3 seconds. And right now, we had 19,000 approved last year, and this year we're over 30,000, so a 60% increase in just interest. And we've expanded charter schools. We have open enrollment. We have a tax credit program in place, and we have a very, very robust homeschool program in the state of Iowa. So we really feel like we have educational freedom on the menu.
All of the above.
Iowa.
All of the above. Isn't that amazing? I think as we wrap up, I'm going to kind of have a shameless plug, because Alec has been working together with all of our private sector friends here and legislators to put together an alliance, the Education Freedom Alliance, where we thought, you know, we like a little competition among the governors. We like to kind of pit Iowa against Arkansas. And I did say to the governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders whipped into action after you got yours done. She was just 2 weeks behind. But this 25 by 25 effort, we call it the Education Freedom Alliance, and thank you for joining on with us and becoming a co-chair of that alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, no, thank you. I want to thank you. And JCN, we are so grateful, because it is an education revolution that we're seeing happening across this country. And it takes all of us. It takes you with the policy and really working with the states. And as we talked about earlier, every state's different. So this is how Iowa did it. But, you know, Sarah took kind of almost our same language, but then added some additional education reforms to that. So she could say, I've got the best one in the country, and I've upped that governor from Iowa. So I just appreciate the nuances and just the intricacies that you bring to the table, and then to have the, you know, the media piece of it, to have the radio, the national piece, to really, again, provide cover for our lawmakers that are working hard. It is hard, you know, but you just, if I could stay strong, stay committed, have the resolve to follow it through. Because it is the right thing to do, but it is an exciting organization. I am honored, beyond honored, to be a part of it, and have said, and I'm happy to talk to anybody or come to your states or whatever I can do to be helpful, but it all starts with 25 by 2025 and the resources that you're putting into it. So thank you so much for really being instrumental in getting that done.
Well, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, Governor Kim Reynolds.
Thank you. Thanks, I really appreciate that.